For those folks who are concerned or worried about AI, that you should have a wariness. You should be thinking about it, but you shouldn't be scared of it.
Welcome to the Badass Leaders Podcast. Today, we are speaking to the incredible Eric Doherty. Eric brings extensive experience as a healthcare executive committed to transforming global health through strategic innovation. His career focuses on enhancing patient access, improving care quality, and driving technological advancements in healthcare delivery. Over the course of his career, Eric has led initiatives across companies ranging from $250 million to $100 billion in valuation. His leadership philosophy centers on a patient-first approach, leveraging technology and innovation to create scalable, sustainable, and impactful healthcare solutions worldwide. So, join me, Angela Gill Nelms, on today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast, where I'm joined each week by industry experts for intimate and eye-opening discussions about the challenges and joys facing the leaders of today. Listen in and get ready to scale your company, grow your brand, and unlock your full badass potential. Welcome to the Badass Leaders Podcast.
Thank you.
I'm super excited.
Me too.
And I want you to kick us off by you tell the listeners and everyone watching, why are you here today? Why did you say yes?
I said yes because of the money that was in the envelope that you sent to me. That was that. But, besides that, it wasn't enough. But it was, it got me to think about it. I honestly thought that it was a good kind of rapport we had on our previous one. And obviously the conversation points that we're going to talk about, technology, AI, and kind of the involvement of kind of every angle you can think of around those two is really where I thought, we'd have a very good, deep intellectual conversation.
Love it, love it. So that envelope with that fictitious money is still lost in the mail, right?
Well, no. I got the money. It just was those 5s and 10s just wasn't enough.
Oh, I'll remember next time. I'll throw in some ones in as well next time. Sound good?
Benjamin's would be better.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I love it. So we're here today. We're going to talk about AI.
Right.
Which I know you are passionate about.
I love it.
I love it. I love it.
People are afraid of it. I don't think they should be. They should be, kind of wary of it, but not afraid of it.
Okay. And so we're going to walk through some of those journeys today as we talk. And so since you referenced it, you were previously a guest on my other podcast, which is Recovery Advocate Network, Coffee of Conversation.
Yep.
And we talked about AI there. So we'll definitely add the links to that episode in this episode so people can watch both of them.
Perfect.
But this is going to be very different. Let's dig in. First off, since this is a leadership podcast, I want to start off talking about leadership. And we've talked about the difference between a leader and a manager. Yeah. And I love to hear what great leaders think about how you define those, and then maybe how, as you're growing someone or working with someone, how you then teach them to grow those.
Yeah, honestly, the difference is pretty, I think, astounding. You've got a manager who, that's what they call it, manages, who basically looks at employees or individuals and manages what they do on a day-to-day basis. They don't have any type of, I think, future focus. They don't have any type of future, I think, help for that individual in mind. And so there is a huge difference between that and what a leader is. A leader is somebody who has a vision, who has a direction of where they want to go or where they want to take a business or take individuals. So if they are leading a team, and that's the other difference, a manager will not lead a team. They'll manage by an individual kind of setting, whereas a leader will more manage in a team type of environment. They will have their direction, their thought process, their kind of go-to strategy on what they want to do, how they want to go about doing it, and how they want to achieve it, and then do it. And I think that's where the big difference is between the two. One of the questions when you sent it to me, I was like, I've got some pretty good ideas around that. One of them was really that I learn most from my worst person managing me.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that right there is, the biggest tell in that, I think when you are managed by somebody or quote unquote try to be led by somebody that doesn't really have that ability or doesn't have really the insight of themselves and what they're doing, you learn the most from them. And I think from that end of things, that's, I think, where I want to make a valid point on the differences. Because, when you are led by somebody that is not a forthright leader, you learn the aspects of what not to do when you become a leader.
Okay, tell me an example. Surely you have one. No, we're going to leave the names out to protect the guilty.
Yeah.
But give me an example of something.
Just the micromanaging part of
yes.
it. I think that's where there's some big issues that can come up, when you're trying to lead or manage people, where if you are micromanaging, that's not a leader. Micromanaging is, somebody who's on top of you on a regular basis, on top of you, wanting this or that, and it's got nothing to do with the business, got nothing to do with how a company can be run. It's all about them trying to nitpick on what you're doing as an individual. And I think for a person to do that, it's not really going to help the business. For a person to do that from an employee standpoint, it really kind of tampers their efforts and their expectations down quite a bit. It doesn't give them any type of, potential authority. That it doesn't give them any type of insider direction. And I think in general, it just really, diminishes the culture of an organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. And talk about how can you not inspire someone? You can not inspire them by micromanaging them. That would be the first way to push them away.
Exactly. Right? And I was going to add too, I think the other aspect of it is when it comes to a leader, they get everybody involved. And if you're leading a company, you're getting your marketing team involved, your sales team involved, your ops team involved, your finance team involved, your HR team involved. You're getting them involved in kind of any and every aspect of the business. You want to make sure that you're transparent with them. You want to make sure that they are in the know as to what's going on with the business. You can't give them everything, but you give them what is relevant to what they do. And I think by doing that, it just really instills a great culture and a great organization.
Right. You take away this idea of silos, which is, so many organizations have huge silos and disparate systems. And then and I believe when you set that up, you create a foundation with a lack of trust. And that's what micromanaging is. Yeah. It's a lack of trust. That's what you're saying to your team member. I don't trust you to do your job. Therefore, I'm constantly going to make sure I get into every little thing.
It can also be, from past examples, it could also be that they feel that they can do your job better than them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's to the point of, okay, the whole reason you hired this person is so that you can go and do great. And I was just listening to this in a book. I'm trying to remember which one it was. And they were talking about you may be better in theory at doing something than one of your team members because you used to do it for a long period of time, right?
Right.
And they're going to do it differently. All great things. So you know what? Let go and do. The whole reason you were moved into your new role was to accomplish new things.
Exactly.
Not the old.
And when you're hiring, it's good to hire somebody who has very, very good skills, and maybe skills that are like yours as a manager. But you also want to make sure that they are able to do the job on their own.
Yeah, and absolutely. Independent. Love it.
And if they do have issues, that's another story. That's another, kind of management or HR thing that comes up, and you have to deal with it that way.
I'm laughing every time you hit the mic based on our conversation.
I'm trying to avoid the elbow. But yeah, I think that's where you've got to make sure you hire the right people with the right mindset, but also let them do what they need to do and let them do what they can do. Because again, that just instills a great culture within the organization.
Love it. So I like to think about, we should also in this process get to know humans as humans. It's my favorite thing. It's one of the values of the AGN group, and the consulting that we do is get to know humans as humans. So speaking of that, Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about you as a human, and then we're going to dig into AI.
I breathe, which is also
really
cool.
Sweet.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
As opposed to a computer. Great healthcare background. I've been in healthcare pretty much all of my working life. My dad was a pharmacist. My mom was a microbiologist. So I grew up in science and healthcare, which is pretty cool. My dad was with Walgreens for a number of years, so I got that business side of things kind of embedded into what I do today, which has been very, very helpful. And just kind of grew into roles within different organizations, both in pharma as well as medical device. And then that also has now moved into more in the tech and IT side, as well as the pharmacy operations side. So I've had a number of elements of roles that have really touched people. And I think that's what's been kind of my drive. I've always been somebody who is in roles or has done things that are very focused on individuals and helping and making sure that from either a healthy standpoint or a monetary standpoint that they're helped out. And just been in roles that I've been blessed to be able to do that, which has been pretty awesome. Been with large companies and small. I've been with GSK, Abbott Laboratories, AstraZeneca. Been with smaller companies and startups. And I like nimble environments of businesses. I like to be able to have a decision, make that decision, have it go through quickly as opposed to a lot of red tape. So I like the smaller divisions and or businesses in general. But I think you can also find companies that are larger that still have that nimbleness as well, where you can get things done. And I enjoy getting things done.
Love, love, love it. Okay, so you have a long career in IT, cybersecurity, and now AI. So let's can you break down what AI is for individuals who are now thinking, what are they even talking about?
Yeah.
So can we give some basics?
I'm sure a lot of folks have heard of AI. I mean, it's been in the news
2025.
The last year and a half. I think for most people, it's been around for a number of years. And it's what's called machine learning AI, where you're taking data or data sets and you're running basically algorithms and basically you're asking the data to do something and you're getting back an answer from that kind of question or statement of what you want to have done. Where more generative AI is coming into play, which is what is in the news more so now than anything, it's where you're taking that data, the systems are being run to give you an answer, but it's also finding out what is maybe a better answer based on that data or based on what the outcome was, and then based on that outcome and how that reiteration of data could be going forward. So in simple terms, generative AI is a way of taking information that's out there and making it better. So then taking it to a next level of making a system run better or a platform work better or a way of doing things work better in, let's say, a manufacturing setting. All of that kind of wraps around the generative AI side of things.
Yep. And so both of them are built off of, and the initial part of it, off of data that's out there.
Correct. Large language models.
Yep.
Boatloads of data. And it could be a data mark from, a wearable watch. It could be a data mark from, any type of EKG, ECG in the healthcare world. It could be billing information. It could be financial information, data that's coming in. You can run whatever you want to off of that to get certain answers that you want to get to.
Right. Awesome. So, okay. So tell me, as companies, organizations, schools, how everyone in the world is trying to figure out how to utilize AI and often struggling with it. Can we walk through a couple of steps or advice that you would give a company that's like, hey, I want to start integrating AI into our services?
Due diligence, very, very important. Making sure that the company that you are looking to work with is the right company. You also really want to make sure what your outcome is as an organization. If you're a school or if you're a financial institution or even a pharmaceutical company, if you're using some type of an AI platform, what is your outcome that you want to achieve? And then can that company do it? And then again, do the due diligence wrapped around that. The other aspect of it is just really making sure that if you do have that outside organization given access to your data, make sure there's, I guess I would call them kind of gateways that are either open or closed to make sure that they don't get access to information you don't want them to have access to. That's a really key point because nowadays there are so many bad people out there and ways of getting into bad information and just making sure that you've got those guardrails and
Can you give an example of what something might be that you might not want this partner to get a hold of?
Well, there's two ways.
Okay.
Again, those guardrails are key. So if you've got the outside company that you're looking at, let's say contracting with, making sure they're reputable and all of that, and do your background on, where have they done work prior, how were they perceived, what were their outcomes, and did they work well with that other company. The other side of it is internally, Change Healthcare. It was just released today. I just saw some of the reports on the billions that were lost with that Change Healthcare cyber attack. So it's that side of it too. So if you've got a outside company that's coming in and working with your data, Are there guardrails to not only protect the data, but also protect that company, but also protect the environment? And if it's not, there could be potentially millions or billions that are lost in that event as well. I mean, it's like 2.9 to 3.5 billion that was lost in the Change Healthcare cyber attack.
So for those who don't know about that, can you describe what happened or what the...
Yeah, because I got notification in the mail that my information was one of them. In essence, there was a cyber attack a little over a year ago where it was an outside country that got access to the data and basically took the data out of, it was Change Healthcare, which is part of UHC Optum United Health Group, got access to their data and made it public. And not a good thing. And basically they held it for ransom for a little while, got their money and still released it. And so the money, though, that was lost in that situation was very, very overwhelming.
Wow.
And again, in the billions. And it can happen to anybody. It can happen to a ma and pa, a little store down the road here in Atlanta, or it can happen to, again, big organization up in Minneapolis.
Okay, so now that everyone's terrified of AI, we've just made them very afraid of it. One of the things I was just thinking about is I wonder if at some point insurance companies are going to start offering some sort of AI insurance. I mean, you have directors and officers insurance. You have cybersecurity insurance that people are required. I wonder if at some point, or if they're just going to tie it into the cybersecurity
They would
risk.
tie that into the cybersecurity risk. Yeah, it'd be part of that.
Although if I gave an insurance company this idea and they use it, they make lots of
They
money.
separate policies, yeah.
I want a portion of the money. I'm just saying it right now. You heard it on the Badass Leaders podcast.
All right, travelers, call her now.
Angela Gill Nelms. You can mail me the check. I'll send the information.
And maybe
in an
I'll get
envelope.
that cash then.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. There
Yeah,
we
maybe
go.
they'll attach it to the cash.
That'd be perfect.
Oh, we'll
yeah, and
see.
I think too the aspect of AI, and again using that environment. I'll go back to the Change Healthcare. Did they have the right guardrails in place? Did they have the right gating system in place in the security system and all their IT platforms? No, they did not, and obviously they did not, because that wouldn't have happened had they had it in place.
Right.
So there's just got to be a way within an organization. Both at the top leadership to really make sure that they are looking at it, as well as the IT group within that organization. But just making sure that you're doing your due diligence and making sure that your systems are avoiding any type of issues, any type of obviously threats, both inside and outside, because it can come from inside as well. And just making sure that those are taken care of on a very, very regular basis and looked at on a regular basis.
One thing I was thinking as well is that new companies, a beauty a new company has is you can build your data infrastructure from the start thinking about how you want to put those guardrails in to protect that information. Like the rest of the company, I mean, all these companies are out there, and when their data system or their data lake was built, they weren't thinking AI was going to come in and dig and make assumptions and then potentially, maybe the AIs come in and now they have access to your HR folder. And then next thing you know, you say to this one team, oh, we want you to use this AI thing. And then everyone on the team knows everyone's salary.
Yep.
And now it's fully disclosed, or knows everyone's performance review or something like that should not be, right? And yet, if we're thoughtful about it, for those entrepreneurs out there that are starting their businesses, it's a great time to do research on these things.
Exactly, yes. As a startup company, very, very important to do it that way. Yes, and it makes things much easier down the road.
Yeah.
But as we all know, there's a lot of companies that can't do that because they already are working with data.
Yep.
And so again, just making sure that their systems have those guardrails in place and those access points denied or closed off. And I think it's also training. I think a lot of it has to do with, the training of the folks on the team, both, small teams and large teams, or maybe the entire corporate team, but ensuring that training's there as well, because there are, everybody gets emails, right? And so there's links in emails, or you get these texts nowadays, and they're fabricated texts. My mom literally texted me a couple of days ago about a text she got from I think it was either Mississippi or Florida toll system. And it was not a correct text, but if she clicked on that link, who knows where it would go and what it would do. So those things are coming up all the time. So that training part or educating part is really saying, hey, don't open everything you see on an email or text. Don't click on anything you see that looks iffy.
Right.
Do your due diligence on that before you do the clicking to ensure that those things don't happen.
And I will say from experience, we had an issue with this at a couple of companies ago that I worked at, in that Outlook, the little bar is supposed to say if this is from an external or something like that. They had some sort of bug, and some of the emails were coming through that were spam or that were phishing emails, and they did not have that on there. And sometimes people get used to seeing that as a red flag.
Yep.
And if you don't see that, and your CEO is asking you to go to Starbucks and buy all these gift cards suddenly.
Very odd.
Right, which would be very odd. True story. I did have a previous employee who did that.
Okay.
And bought them Visa cards. And then thankfully, before he sent them anywhere or did whatever he was supposed to do next, it occurred to him, this doesn't seem right.
Wow. Okay.
And he reached out.
I wonder if he did his expense report on it.
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm
I
pretty
hope
sure.
not.
But it was also like when he did that,
Yeah.
I was caught off guard because I thought, why would you do that? Like, you're a smart human being. And it's a reminder that smart people get tricked by these things all the time.
Yes.
Right. It's not just I do have a friend who their elderly parents lost $30,000 recently to a scam via one of the click things. So,
yeah, and they're hitting the elderly population big time.
Yes.
Any way they can. And again, is there AI involved? Yes. I mean, AI is pulling probably information somehow, some way about, demographic age group here, location here, pulling it up, figuring out who's using their phone, who's not using their phone. All of that's probably, from a bad person standpoint, used by AI.
Yeah.
They're using AI.
Yeah. And we're not giving anyone new ideas because it's already happening.
That's right. It's already
for a
happening.
minute, that was like, stop, Eric. Don't say anything more.
I was hoping my envelope would get a little bigger, but I guess not.
I know. Next time. So I think then with this, if a company is so let's talk about the companies that are starting to use AI and talk about what rules and regulations currently exist and how you also potentially see that those may change over time to improve the process.
So for small companies, nothing is out there rule and regulation wise. Nothing's been set. Nothing's been put out as a law. It's more for the larger organizations just to make sure they're protecting the data. And we're talking anything over, I believe it's either 10 or $100 million in revenue. It's really the larger companies that have to abide by this. And there are some guiding principles. The White House came out about a year and a half ago with their kind of guideline around that and making sure that if the data wasn't protected, the organizations would be fined. So there are some, I would say, minor type of rules right now. The EU also came out with theirs. Will they be updated? Probably as we go along, because obviously it's becoming more and more of a day-to-day kind of concern. But for right now, small companies don't have to really abide by anything, which is also kind of scary if you think about it.
Right.
But I think when you're starting out an organization, like you mentioned earlier, just making sure that you're putting systems in place that are starting to look at that and to make sure you're protecting the data, make sure you're securing the data, make sure there's not many people that have access to the data. All of that kind of goes into starting up and setting up a system to ensure that there's non-actionable bad people getting into the data.
Right. And I think I'm a big believer in checklists and things like this. And one of the things I observed in a previous company that I came into as COO was when they offboarded employees, they weren't removing their access from a whole bunch of stuff.
Wow. Okay.
And so no one was going in and doing access reviews. I personally am a believer in doing quarterly access reviews of your important systems and making it a requirement. And you could do more frequently, it is, but on a cadence that is a set cadence that you always do, and you document it with proof that you did it.
Yeah.
And that way, because here you have these former employees who still had access to documents that were new document, right?
Access,
they had access, right? Yeah. So
that's very important. And I think, again, me in the healthcare side of things, that's one of the areas that they've always been, I would say, pretty concerned with. They've always had a kind of a focus on ensuring that the systems are locked down and all that. Typically every week for the IT team is probably a norm, if not more often. I hit it again, by the way.
I know. I laugh every time internally.
And then The other would be, again, just, making sure the equipment's turned in and all of that. And again, have those checklists for employee checkout, because it does, I think, it can definitely open yourself up for a lot of issues, especially if the employee left on a negative issue.
What are some rules, some common rules that can be accidentally broken when using AI? So we just talked about access, but what are some other ones that people should be cognizant of?
Just making sure that the data that you're putting into a system to have AI run on is good data. That really is, and just, making sure it's when you're looking at either clinical trial information or drug discovery information, or if you're trying to work an AI platform in a manufacturing facility, the data that you're putting in has to be relevant, has to be up to date, has to be, I would say, closest to real time as possible, just to ensure that you've got the structure of a data complex to have that AI run out of it.
Right.
So that's probably the biggest thing. I think the other aspect of it is just, again, really ensuring that you've got the outcome in place, and you have the algorithms, again, the modality of, hey, this is what I want the data to do and bring me as far as outcome of data, what that looks like, and how succinct you've made it. Because if you make it too broad, it's going to give you a broad answer. If you make it too tight, it's not going to give you as much information as you need. You need to make sure it's bold enough and strategically set up enough to where you get a straight line outcome out of your data to ensure a good decision-making type of mode.
Okay, yeah. And it's kind of pausing to say, what does success look like at the end?
Yep.
Defining success and what those variables are, and then making sure the questions or the data or the information you put in has the ability to reach that goal.
Correct.
And it's going to be structured that way.
Yeah, and I think a good example, let's say a manufacturing facility. How do you speed manufacturing? How do you increase the efficiency of manufacturing, a widget or whatever? The data you're going to be putting in would be everything from, the man hours, the time it takes to put this piece on that piece, and, to mold this or mold that, et cetera. All of that's data. And so as that's being put in, just making sure that it's all, again, relevant, up to date, and correct information. And then once it is, let it run.
Let's talk a little bit about the power of AI.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're talking about rules, regulations, things that you should be stressed about because they can have a downfall to your business, put you out of business,
Yep.
right? Destroy your brand, destroy your reputation, all those types of things. Okay. So one might think, wait, why are we even doing AI if it has all these risks? But AI is powerful.
Yeah.
So why don't you share some about the power of AI?
Yeah, again, I think where we are at today, again, using machine learning AI for 20, 25, 30 years, it works. That always has been something that is a go-to type of AI strategy we've used in the past. And it's given good information, but it's not given us any feedback or information that makes that decision or that makes that information better. And so with the generative AI, that's what it's doing. And so the power is that basically as you are getting that data in, let's say, a machine learning mode and transferring it over into a generative AI mode, the aspect of taking old data that you've run it off of, hit it again, for those people who are not watching, and basically allowing that data to be enhanced to find better ways and better modalities of doing things. And that's really the bottom line. I think it's, the power is allowed because you're taking data and making ways of doing things better, and that is powerful. I mean, you're even from a mobility standpoint, from we talked about manufacturing, the efficiencies there. I look at the healthcare side. I mean, everything on AI now really is being pushed towards, how many hours are the nurses on the floor? How many hours are the doctors on the floor? How many hours are they spending with patients? All of that's coming into play where, maybe they're not spending enough or they're spending too much. And that AI part that's being pushed into their systems and looked at is just making really cool outcomes and saying, hey, this is a better way of doing it with this patient, or that's a better way to do it with that patient.
Yeah, I love that because I think that I know at Georgia Tech, I'm on the College of Engineering board and I'm on the board to the president. And in one of these two meetings years ago, I believe it was College of Engineering. It was back when, so I believe it was like maybe exactly 2 years ago. and the schools started to say, wait, should we take away the entry or the application essay because people are just going to write it with AI? Should we do that, right? And what Georgia Tech decided was that no, we're not going to, because the reality is, if you think about it, people have had AI for a very long time. You know what they had? They had their family could afford to pay someone to help coach them through or review, and so Georgia Tech decided all we're doing is leveling the playing field.
Yeah.
And what we want to be able to see people do is, what are you going to do with that information that you get? Because you can very much tell if someone's written something with AI and not touched it afterwards.
There's been a lot of things I've seen with people writing AI. They've sent it to me, and you can tell where it's either misspelled sometimes, very rarely, but it is, or just the grammar that's put into it is just not correct.
Right.
At all. And it's interesting. You know, one of the things I wanted to mention too, you know, for those, again, that might have a fear or a wariness of AI, you know, think of AI as being kind of our Google 20 years ago, 25 years ago. You know, I think that's where a lot of folks, I think, will go, you're right. Because remember, when we had Google first come out, we would Google a search term or a phrase or whatever, and it boom, you know, shoot us information. That's basically what this is doing too.
Right.
You know, if you're on ChatGPT or OpenAI, you put in whatever you want to look for, it's pulling information from all over the place, which is what Google did, but it's making it more succinct and more, I would think, down to a level of exactly what you want to have as an outcome. So if you want a job description, if you want, you know, a picture of whatever, you know, it's giving you that because it's all the data it's pulling in. And so if you weren't really afraid of Google, AI is probably not something you should be afraid of. But again, with Google, you want to be careful of what you're asking it and what you're trying to look for, because the data when it comes back, may not be appropriate or may not be factual. Same thing with Chat and OpenAI. The stuff that's coming back is probably or potentially not going to be factual. You just got to fact check it.
Well, and I love the fact check part of it, and thinking about using it and forcing yourself to do the fact checking as well. Also being cognizant of confirmation bias. And have you put, and confirmation bias is when you get it, you put something into it with an assumption. And so then it gives you that as the answer.
Right.
And so if you're aware of and thinking about confirmation bias, then the inputs or the questions you're asking, you can structure those in a way to reduce the amount that you're just going to get. Like if you type into Google, I don't know, some disease thing and say it has this, that, and the other, do I have it? Like going to WebMD, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Then it's going to give you all the ways that align to how you have it.
Right. Exactly. That is exactly. And OpenAI and ChatGPT would do the same thing.
Yes.
Ironically. So yeah, very similar. And that's what I'm saying. There's some like good elements, bad elements. You just gotta, you know, treat it like you did with Google. Same type of thing.
Love that. I love that. And I think like some good things. I love AI, as you do too.
Yep.
So here we're both talking about all these like scary things,
Don't
and we
be
both
scared.
love it. Don't be scared. Because I also think that AI can empower every individual to spend more time doing the things that are unique for them and their skill set, and not waste a lot of time. For example, a job description. Mm-hmm. Okay. You could say, I'm not using any AI. I'm going to sit down and write my first job description by hand. Right. Okay. And now you're going to spend 6 hours writing a job description.
Right. Where in the past we went to Google and got a job description.
Right. And now,
I mean, we would copy it, probably edit it, and that type of thing. To form it. But yeah, now you're able to use AI to get things like that. Yeah.
And to automate, I also think of like automating processes, like even for the podcast, right? The minute that Katie puts in, Eric said yes, right? AI and Asana is going in and going, okay, these are all the next steps. Go do them.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think in that way, you can utilize some of those things to help you even build in the processes that you need to in your organization to have all those checks and balances, to be safe from those fun people who want to send you the links to the toll that you owe and take down your whole system.
And on the flip side, so what's happening too, the business has been enhanced because of the ability to do things like that in Chat and ChatGPT and OpenAI. in that there's systems now in place that can take structured data that you've put, again, 6 times, maybe 7, structured data that you've put into a document or wherever you put it on your system that can actually search and figure out if it was AI driven. So if it was AI made. So there's actually systems in place. You mentioned the Georgia Tech part earlier. There's systems in place that can actually do a check on that to see if it was written by AI. That's what's pretty crazy.
Yeah. But I think that everyone needs to hear that and remember that. And if you think that you're right or you're doing something and no one's going to figure out at some point,
it's going to be figured out.
They will.
Yep.
And then it will go against, your integrity and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I mean, I use AI to help in writing the blog posts that I write because it gives me the initial talking points that I can then expand upon and stuff like that. So I think that's where the power can be and can the power can really thrive in a healthy way. But if I have it write a blog post and then I don't do anything to it afterwards,
there's a problem with that.
Right.
Yeah. It's not yours, basically.
Exactly.
And I think also too, the cool thing about it is that you can, again, when you're defining what you want, so going back to manufacturing and the example I gave before, or doing something on your own where you're trying to write some type of blog post or job description, whatever, if you have it defined on what you want as the outcome, as long as you're editing it and doing it in your style, that's cool. What's kind of scary, and again, for those AI scared people out there, what's scary is that as you're always kind of using ChatGPT or OpenAI, it's also seeing how you do that and how you use it.
Yes.
So it senses and gets an idea as to how you, I would not say think, but potentially, but how you are responding or typing or asking. And from that, then it's also getting insights as to how it can give you information back. A good example is that as, and if you mentioned Outlook earlier, the 8th time, basically as you're typing, sometimes it'll start pushing out words that might be what you're trying to type and then swipe here, whatever it is now on
predictive text
on Apple. It's getting a sense of how you write and how you verbalize through typing or through messaging. And again, that's all AI.
And you think about it, there's some great things about that, right?
Yeah,
because
it makes
then
efficiency and easier.
Efficiency, right?
Yep.
And then there are also some not so great things. Like when people read something from me, they often say, I can tell that it has your voice in it, right?
Interesting.
And so I think if something were to get that good at mimicking Angela's voice, then maybe something has been written that I didn't write that's not something that I would ever write because it is, I don't know, scary, criminal, I don't know. The next check will be going to when I'm in prison for something that I didn't even do, but because it has learned how to talk in Angela's voice, then someone could manipulate and take advantage of that.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah. I actually got a little scared just then. I was thinking, I don't look good in orange. Like I really do not look good in orange. I don't. Okay. So when you think about companies out there that have implemented the utilization of AI, we talked about Change Healthcare and what happened with that. Can you give us some examples of perhaps a company that you think has done it really well?
Mayo.
Ooh, tell me more.
So they actually have an AI chief AI director or chief of AI that oversees all of their different AI platforms. And what they're doing.
Now, are you speaking of Mayo Clinic?
Yeah.
Not mayo that you put on the hamburger?
No, not mayonnaise and not the quarterback from the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, okay, cool.
But no, we're on the Mayo Clinic side. They've got 3 sites now: Minneapolis, down in Jacksonville, and then out in Phoenix. And they're really pushing the element of AI in healthcare and trying to find, again, better ways of treating patients, better ways to increase their outcomes, better efficiencies within their organization, and they are a very well-run organization. My mom actually was up there about 4 months ago and again, she's a microbiologist, so she's been in that kind of science health space, and so she knows when good is good, and she was like, this is great.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
It was pretty cool, how they have their system set up. But on the AI front, they are really looking at, from sensor data to EHR data to, again, nurses on the floor, how does that all interact and how does that make a patient outcome better? They're really striving towards that, and the use of AI is just apparent. throughout their whole system.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing that you said to get back to leadership that really stuck out to me is they made a decision that they were going to take it seriously, and they made it someone's job
Yep.
description to actually do that.
Yeah, and more are doing that. If you actually look, I would say of the top 500 companies, I would say probably about 60 to 70% have started really looking at it and or put it in place where they've got somebody that really not the chief of IT, but it's literally an AI chief. And I think that's kind of where things are going direction-wise, where you've got those folks who either have the PhDs or have worked in that large language model type of system with AI, and they're bringing them on board to really make sure that, hey, if we're going to put a system in place, I want somebody that can lead it, that knows it, and can run it, but also make sure that it doesn't hurt the business. And so they have to have somebody with that expertise to be able to do that.
So we just created a whole bunch of new jobs.
Yeah,
as well.
there are.
So,
Yeah.
And a lot of people are also fearful. Tongue-tied. A lot of people are also fearful of the replacement of humans in roles with AI.
Yeah.
And what that will have on the economy and these individuals who now might not have the same job. Now, I have some thoughts on this, but tell me what your thoughts on how really we can shift out of that mindset.
Well, I don't know if you shift out of it. I think what is happening is you've got a lot of redundant type of roles or easily transferable to technology roles that are being basically replaced from a human standpoint into a machine standpoint. There's a lot of the things going on logistics, as an example, where you've got a lot of these companies like Amazon and others that are using basically robots and things of that nature to move product and basically move through a system. And that's all run by AI. They're using systems in place to make it run better, and make it run more efficient. And they're saving a lot of money by doing it. Where I think the aspect of kind of the employment side of it from a human end of things, there are opportunities. Like I said earlier with the chief of AI, there's that side of it. There's the IT side. There's more the service side is still, I think, a big area that there still needs to have human involvement. The delivery side, I'm going to throw that out. You got all these folks now using these delivery companies. Will that be AI driven, and will that be non-human driven? Probably. It's kind of crazy what's going on. But I think those IT roles, the roles more on the service end, and that kind of still human touch needs to be there. But a lot of roles that are kind of the redundant roles are the ones that are going to be replaced.
Right. And so this has happened. It happened in the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the first time that the world has panicked because something may have an impact on the workforce that will be viewed differently depending on where you fit into the workforce.
Exactly.
And we have pivoted in the past very successfully. People have learned new skills. They've, through different types of education, different types of passions, those sorts of things, have then pivoted and been quite successful. So I think there is so much hope for that.
Yeah, I would say there's hope, but there's trepidation.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of folks don't like the change aspect. They don't feel comfortable with change, and I think that's kind of where there are those that do change and those that don't. I didn't hit it that time. And those that don't, and the ones that don't get passed by. And it's unfortunate, but it's happened before, as you mentioned. It's just a sign of the times.
Exactly.
There was the Model T, there was the phone, there was electricity. All of those little things, yes, they're game changers. AI is a game changer.
Right. Well, I think of an example such as like Kodak. And when they made the decision that they weren't going to really go into digital photography because they made so much money and pictures are meant to be printed.
Yeah.
This is what and the impact it had on their company. The same thing with Blockbuster.
Yep.
No, and the Blockbuster story is they wanted to keep their stores because I think their income's like 12% on late fees.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because of all the returns that weren't happening.
Exactly. And we see now that Blockbuster is out of business because it is
on Netflix.
A lot. Yeah, exactly. And so what advice would you give leaders as they're working with their teams on how they can get their teams and their team members excited around the potential for this in a healthy way?
Goes back to the training, goes back to the education, making sure that, again, the knowledge base is there, that it's here to be a tool, here to help, here to make things more efficient. And as long as they understand that, that's a key element. But then also making sure that they're involved. I think it's very, very key that they understand the why and how and what we're doing, and then what the outcome is. And I think if they understand that, that makes it much, much better for the organization. And I also feel that they need to be part of, kind of what the organization wants to do with it. What are the full impacts of what the organization is trying to drive towards that involves them, and how that in their day-to-day working life involves them. And so I think if they understand that and have that buy-in, that'll be very, very key. And the education and training is very, very, I wasn't going to say elemental, but it's elemental to what's needed, because they need to understand how to use it, where the good and the bad can happen. And as long as they get that, that's perfect.
So I think one of the things I was thinking of, so as a good leader, what does a good leader do? A good leader creates the vision and then figures out the milestones and the different pieces to have the vision be successful.
Yep.
And then communicates that in an environment to everyone so that you're all running in the same direction.
Right.
And you understand where you're going, and you're actually a team, versus a manager who's just like, oh, we have this problem, this problem, this problem. I don't know.
Use this tool and get it done and give me a report.
Right. I mean,
that's a manager.
Exactly. And we don't talk to managers on this podcast. It's a requirement. You have to be a badass leader to be a guest on the podcast. So, Scott said he was going to add it to his LinkedIn. You can add it to your LinkedIn as well.
I will add it, definitely.
I think that's a special thing. I'll have to get some plaques for some people. Okay. Is there anything that you really hoped we would cover today that we haven't covered?
I just, again, for those folks who are concerned or worry about AI, that you should have a wariness. You should be thinking about it, but you shouldn't be scared of it. Again, there's some really cool aspects of what AI can do in so many realms of our world. One of the things that's pretty cool, you look at population health, you look at underserved areas of not only the United States, but underserved areas of the globe. There's so many ways that AI will be impacting those individuals, both from food production to medication and the right medication for the right people from a health standpoint, potentially lowering costs of medications over a period of time because it can be developed better. There's all sorts of cool things that are coming into play on the healthcare side. And then I think, ultimately, I look at cancer as an example. Where could AI really help in potentially solving cancer and solving, basically the kind of holy grail of cancer treatment. And I think in time it'll be able to do that based on what's happening on the data front. And I think that, really kind of hopefully gives you some hope and some thoughts on where AI can be of benefit. On the flip side, again, you just got to really be careful with how you're using it, where it's being used, who has access to your data when you are using it, and just making sure that those guardrails and those ways of defining who gets the data, where it's used, and how it's used is very, very key. And
if people say, you know what, Eric is so smart, I need more information, I need to work with Eric, how would they do that?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can get a hold of me there. Would love to have chats with you if you have that need. Always available, so definitely able to get
Love
in
it.
touch with.
To collaborate, yeah. And I would say to teams, get excited. There is so much, like you said, there's so much hope.
Oh yeah, big
in
time.
This.
Big time. And again, it's new and it is shiny. Does it have kind of its faults? Yeah. Does it have its little scratches? Yeah. But it's much, much shinier than the scratches.
Yeah.
And there's so much more you can do and much more that can help an organization and obviously helping us. I mean, you've seen the iPhone downloads and you've seen obviously all the different Microsoft downloads. Everything's being run now on AI, or at least it's got the background of AI. And so it's already there. And it's just how can you use it better and how can you make yourself more efficient or your business more efficient or your team more efficient. And there are really cool ways with AI that you can do that.
Yep. And we told you some things to watch out for. So maybe listen to this episode a few times as you're building your strategy and say, yes, I remembered those items, and just go crush it. Okay. Motivational quote time. It is a requirement to share a favorite motivational quote. What is yours?
Yeah. I grew up in high school when this was happening, but if you all are familiar with Jim Valvano, who was the North Carolina State basketball coach back in, I think it was 83, when he was leading their national basketball team championship. He developed cancer afterwards, shortly thereafter. And his motivational quote was, "Never give up, never ever give up." And it's just a quote that's always sunk with me, stayed with me, always with me, and hold dear and true to me. And think of him, which is cool, but also just think, that it's a really good way of looking at how to do things, either when you're on a basketball court or at the gym or in a work environment. And there are ways of getting things done, and finding those ways are part of that never give up part.
Love, 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 love. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks,
this is
Ann.
amazing.
Appreciate it. Awesome. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you had fun.
The microphone nudge at the end is my favorite. You should have just knocked it over.
Popped it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the Badass Leaders Podcast. To hear more interviews with industry experts and learn how to grow your career and leadership potential, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. This podcast is a production of the AGN Group in collaboration with Bedhead Media. To learn more about the AGN Group, visit our website at theagnGroup.com. There, you can discover more about our services, which include hosting workshops, management consulting, brand strategy, keynote speaking, and more. Follow us on all social media channels shown on the screen and displayed in the show notes. And until next week, be brave and be badass.